Happy Thursday. I know that's been a little bit of a stutter stop with the videos, but well, let's just say we've been busy. And some really exciting developments, particularly in the security space, as well as really being looking at taking away some of the hype from a lot of these generative AI waves that are happening. Because it definitely can feel like it's very right? One after the other, like, and even understanding what to make sense of what's meeting importance versus just a nice to have, well, it's definitely difficult. I find difficult, but so the main goal for today is to talk about what secure generative AI and really what security in the digital space looks like going forward, because there's a growing conversation around what security actually means when we end up having all these little generative AI agents, or right, just where we say AI in general, of where does the data live and how do we get it and what sort of safeguards do we put into place? All good questions, right? And something that's been at the forefront of our mind to make sure that we have an answer, not just providing commentary or saying, oh, wow, everything is so vulnerable right now and we should totally do something about it. Well, we're of the mind that let's do something about it. So what we're seeing here is the wallpaper for a distribution or flavor of Linux referred to as the Noble Numbat. I think it's some kind of rodent, but we're actually running the version after that, just that oracular oracle. I think it's a bird. It's not really important to get stuck into all those. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Let's see. Maybe. Okay, yeah, that looks a little better. All right. Okay, so the important thing when we talk about security, or at least part of that, let's go ahead and just do this so it's a little less, is we want to make sure that we're looking at who has a good standard for that. So, well, the question becomes, what is the standard? Well, one of the major ones, at a very high level, is we look at what's called the National Institute. Sorry, I've just got to pull this up here. National Institute for the Standards of Technology. Whoop. Come here, you. So we have, let's go with, yeah. So again, at a high level, the National Institute for Standards of Technology is an organization who's tasked with, well, as the name would imply, making not just these regulatory guidelines, but also really acting as the stewards who are acting to distribute those. So really, it's not just about that they're a regulatory body, and they operate underneath the auspices of the Department of Commerce. It's that there's a federal level institution that is acting to bring these things together, that's acting to collect everything and then push it back out, right? So because there's a lot of organizations, let's just take the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, for example, that there are a ton of standards that they end up having to do, particularly in the technology space. But, right, we also have to consider that what thresholds, which are pretty robust, that are met in that area may not necessarily be necessary in other areas. So the stringent regulatory security that is found within medicine, maybe not necessary in, say, oh heck, agriculture. At a level of, it's not treated with, say, HIPAA, which is the human. Oh, what does HIPAA stand for again? Oh my goodness, it's been such a long time. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. There you go. So it won't necessarily be treated as how many bushels of crops meet the same threshold as, say, a person's personal or identifiable health information. But at the same time, there are going to be standards. There are standards that will apply to both because they're in either situation we're talking about people, right? And so this is an organization like any made by people that is intended to provide these standards. So, and we refer to these as the Federal Information Processing Standards, or FIPS. And so now, or excuse me, what has been the standard for a while has been FIPS. Oh, come here, you. FIPS 140-2. So, there we go. All right, and we're testing out the abilities of our super wide monitor today. So, there it is. Boop. So, at a high level, and again, I know people are already seeing the .gov and the technology stuff and going like, oh man, this is so boring and I don't really care. Well, so here's really the bottom line. When you hear all this nerd talk about like cryptographic modules and all this security mumbo jumbo, these are methodologies, these are standards, these are the ways that people, organizations, whomever, can be certified to say that they are operating their software, and now we're looking particularly also at hardware, in a very secure way. There are thresholds that you have to meet by accredited labs to become certified for these different standards, this FIPS 140-2, and now this is going to be superseded or surpassed by FIPS 140-3. And well, really, why is that? Well, because we are already seeing a great push in bad actors. When we think of all the different sorts of attacks that have been proliferating, Change Healthcare is one that comes to mind. In fact, it's the biggest one that comes to mind because it affected 1 in every 3 patients by conservative estimates with that attack. And that attack was propagated by an organization that chose to use the programming language primarily, or at least what's been reported is that they used the programming language Rust, which also there's no real surprise that defensively and through red teaming, so blue team and red team, the federal powers that be have classified Rust as a very robust language to use to be able to create what's referred to as memory safe technologies. Again, very high level, not looking to make any experts here, but it is important that an understanding of what is a prudent amount of security to put onto particularly vulnerable populations, what that looks like and what some of these terms may be, because at the end of the day, you want people to have agency. And even if there is a lot to be concerned around and you want to be secure, you also want to ensure that you are not trading an undue amount of freedom for that said security. And this isn't about, everything has to be free. There's a balance, and everybody's going to have a different threshold of what that balance may look like. But it is important, very important, that there's an understanding of when the different thresholds of security are important. So, and we see that, so again, the takeaway here isn't, okay, we have to get everything to be FIPS compliant or FIPS certified. this process, particularly to be certified, it takes, I mean, months, even a year plus, because there are only certain areas that can do that. So typically what we'll see is you'll have, on the one hand, people, organizations, people who are compliant, i.e. that they're using compliant protocols, they're using compliant techniques, compliant hardware, software, the combination of the two, uh, or they are actually certified. And so they have created something that is then certified to be able to house that. So then typically folks who do not have the financial or, you know, we'll just say the means to be able to uh, get certified will then rely on folks to provide those certified services. Whether it's, you know, we think of like cloud hosting, so like cloud being like servers that are serving up different applications. And so for us, Compass specifically, we are jumping into the space not necessarily as someone who's being certified, because that is a lot, but let's pull out of this. And being, there we go, operating with FIPS compliant services and products. So when we look at, again, we see all this technical mumbo jumbo here. At a very high level, what this entails is that for our workloads, we have the capacity to be flexible with our security posture as appropriate. Think of any major computer, whether it's a big old server or a little laptop, think of that like a car, right? So in that car, what makes it go, what really decides at the end of the day on how powerful it is going to be that engine. Yes, there's all the, you know, the exterior, how the tires spin, and how, you know, all those different things, right? I know I'm not really a car person, but the differentiator is going to be that engine. When you hear of kernel, this is what serves between the software of the computer. So we think of all the different applications, and then the hardware, the actual metal in the computer. The kernel acts as that engine, acts as the core of whatever operating system you're using, whether it's Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever. I mean, technically, when we say Linux, like a distribution or a flavor of Linux, like Ubuntu here, technically it is referred to as GNU Linux, because it is like Linux by itself is the kernel that then is working with the GNU. I think it's an operating system. Oh goodness, I gotta make sure I get that correct. GNU Linux. Okay, so the actual OS. So, and this is all coming from the previous operating system known as Unix, which that's a whole lot of nerdistry. The important thing is that Linux and its precursor, they basically is power what most servers, most bigger applications, most like enterprise grade stuff on the software hardware side, they power what that does. And in addition to that, you know that little old thing called Android, you know, the thing that most people have, the operating system that, you know, powers my phone here. Yeah, that's also based off of Linux. So it's not necessarily this completely foreign thing, although some folks like to pretend that that's the case. Really, we're interacting with it. You are interacting with it much, much, much more often than you would think. And granted, yes, if you're like, oh, well, I only have Apple products. Okay, sure. You probably interact with a number of people who have use something like that, or if you happen to, work in an organization that has a bunch of servers, or, you use anything that has works with the cloud, well, congratulations. More likely than not, you're interacting with Linux in a number of different ways. So I just want to remove that view of, oh, we're having to completely shift everything that we've done and I have to relearn everything and have to, right? No, that's not the point here. Point is that you get a choice. So when you look at these here, each one of these is a different kernel, a different engine that are all installed on in the car that is my computer. And so you'll see here that a lot of them will say 5.15.0 because that is the version of that kernel that has been made to be FIPS, the Federal Information Processing Standards, compliant. There are also certified entities or certified images or certified modules, but then when you have those, that's different, but it's by having those modules, by having that certified, all the different pieces that go into that engine, or rather, so think of those modules as parts of that engine, then the engine itself, that can be hot swapped into the vehicle, into the car, to then become that compliant, that correct configuration based off the use case. And so at a high level, we then have the ability, whether we're looking into, like, say, Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Provider. This real time, this is not, that's something that Ubuntu does, but or at a more general level, again, these are, and this isn't all the secret sauce, this is just part of it. But this then allows for that flexibility based off of, oh, well, we were in a partner with somebody and they're primarily looking at Amazon Web Services. Okay, great. Yeah, AWS, big fan. We all use Microsoft Azure. Okay, great. Yep. We'll make sure if necessary, we're able to then posture to have images, have compliant hardware software that is meeting that need. Not everything needs to meet that need. Like regularly, we rely on an unsigned, so like a altogether mildly less secure, but overall more cutting edge. Well, I say less secure. It's not signed. So this right here is what you see. So we're operating the kernel 6.9.2, which is the most recent kernel, and there are a number of security measures that are placed into it at that high level. So think of 5.15 and how many numbers are between that and 6.9.2. But because it is so new, there are just certain things that don't exist yet within it. And so from that security standpoint, but there are a lot of performance things that do end up existing in that. So the biggest change with it really being that it optimizes a lot of the energy requirements for AI workloads. And of course, by this point, because Rust is integrated into the kernel at this level, versus I can't recall, I don't believe at 5.1.5 it was. So really, we're not suddenly becoming completely vulnerable with running the most recent kernel. Rather, we are choosing a posture that reflects the need to be innovative in the space of generative AI. That also allows for a number of energy efficiency measures that are really near and dear to us, because we want to make sure that we are being energy conscious, mindful on whenever we're training, deploying, inferencing, that we are doing so as good stewards of energy use. And then at the same time, we're also then able to view potential vulnerabilities as they're arising, at that cutting edge threshold of use. And so again, this isn't the Wild West. This isn't about we assume huge risk for the sake of assuming it. This is a big part, but one part of that security stack. When we talk about being safe or having safe, secure, and trustworthy AI, these are not just buzzwords. These are not marketing ploys. This isn't hype. This is based in ground truth of meeting that line, that mixture of innovation that really is at that cutting edge, but then also ensuring security, ensuring that we are in a posture that allows for, as needed, to swap whatever the engine may need to be to meet the use case. And again, by and large, most people do not need to be Federal Information Processing Standard compliant or certified. Most people, right, just need a reliable, secure system that meets just regular thresholds, because we don't want to be alarmists. We don't want to cause undue burden, whether financially or psychologically, onto folks because of, God forbid, we misassess a potential threat. This is about choice and aligning that with prudent risk analysis, prudent innovation, prudent service. And so with that, that lets us to be able to, in contrast to anybody else who happens to be in the same space that we're occupying, well, I guess my question would be to anybody else, well, what are you doing to go ahead and make sure that you're going to be secure? I mean, really. Because I suppose what's the word they say? Oh yeah, the moat. The moat of being a former intelligence officer, the moat of understanding that both the blue team and the red team side, and of course the moat of operating with a infrastructure first mindset that is looking at the system as a whole of what we're building, all the way down to the engine, all the way down to those individual components, versus just, hey, let's take ChatGPT and throw something on top of that. Well, I mean, considering that now everybody who uses GPT or ChatGPT can now get access to, what's it called? Custom GPTs for free. I mean, those are thousands of custom GPTs for free. So yeah, it matters now a little more in terms of what your differentiating factor is. So big takeaway from here today is that we have been working tirelessly to make sure that we are posturing correctly to give partners, to give folks in our space that choice of how secure do you want to feel? How secure do you want to be? And not because I'm going to sit here and tell you, oh, yeah, we're using all the highfalutin, blah, 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 and all this jargon and what to speak. No, I'll just tell you that we're using what, the governments of the United States and Canada, because that's who uses FIPS 140-2 and now 140-3. That's who uses those. And that's who really sets that standard. And, NIST, they're also the ones that have put on the National AI Research Resource, the NAIR pilot. They're the ones that are really acting as that agent that's going to be connecting all the dots on creating reliable AI standards for everybody in America, based off the executive order that came from the White House. So when we say that we are working to ensure that we're at that cutting edge, but also being responsible, we know what we're talking about. Again, I have no doubt and we learn from a lot of from other folks, and it's really interesting to see in the medical space some of the languages being used, and that just they're just having a bit of a moment. It's not most folks in medicine are just not really they're doing what they're supposed to do and focusing on their patients. It's I'm optimistic that folks who currently are choosing to spend most of their time uh, sort of posturing and talking about, oh, well, AI isn't safe, and oh, well, let me show you about this hallucination here. And well, I mean, there are medicine has a long track record of poor introduction of technology. So it's coming from a place of, I mean, yeah, they've not really had good history of that. However, it is, I think, important that folks not lose sight of not everything that looks like a duck and quacks like a duck is necessarily going to be a duck. So I suppose to folks in that, I don't know. I'm optimistic that ultimately truth is going to win out in the end. The folks who are doing what they're doing and just honestly, in a lot of ways, a little bit of fear mongering and speaking through, oh, I don't know, just they're just not really doing a good service. Much more reactionary. Well, then I, I I hope you figure it out. I hope that whatever is happening uh, that's causing you to do this, I hope I hope you get past that. Because if you think that this is going to be like another medical conference where it's just, oh, well, let me go ahead and put up some numbers and yep, look at us and give us another check for a grant for something that's just based off of not really great data, those days are coming to an end. Most Ricky Tick like. And I mean, thank goodness, because we people deserve better than that. They deserve better than you know, bunch of crap studies, crap papers, paper mills. Yeah. So, anywho, before I go ahead and go all full bore into that particular conversation, uh, I'm going to go ahead and put the link for this FIPS, these modules, and think of these modules again at a very high level as just parts of that engine, parts of the thing that are going to go into that kernel. So when we say a kernel, think engine, and really, I hope the takeaway here, besides me being just a little salty, I suppose, and I'll own that, is that you have a choice on really looking at what that security posture, at least part of that, might end up looking like. And that there are standards for that to go to. And decide for yourself, your organization, hey, do I really need this, that, and the other thing? And it's an easy question to ask to folks. And when they're saying, oh, we have the most secure blah, 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 you say, well, like, particularly if you're in the healthcare or government space, the question is, well, are you FIPS compliant? Are you considering using any of these? Like, what's your posture look like? They go, well, it's like, no, like, just it's a yes or no. It's a yes or no. If the answer is no, it's like, okay, why? And if the answer is yes, okay, well, can you please show me what you're doing with that? And again, most people, I'd say 90% of folks, organizations, they're not going to need this threshold. They just won't. But healthcare, I mean, depending on where you're at, and in certain areas, yeah. So it really is just going to come down to making that choice, making the best choice for your organization, and what that needs to look like. for you. So, all that being said, we'll be putting out more information, particularly into this. And really, again, it's been a long time coming. Apologies for the what's it called, radio silence, in terms of not being. Ooh, that's fun. Look at that. Oh goodness. But it was really important. It was most important that we end up having an answer versus just more questions when it came to security and with what we can do, what we can offer, and what matters when it comes to all this deep technology. Because again, it's not about, well, what's the best model? What's the best service? It's like, well, what's the one that you feel confident using? What's the one that makes you feel safe using? I mean, if that isn't part of that conversation, I mean, everybody makes their own choices, but in our opinion, it should be. So we wanted to have an answer to that question because it matters. It matters to folks, particularly very vulnerable populations who are seeing all this stuff happen and change. And I mean, how often aren't given a seat at the table and just told, "Oh, well, no, this is too dangerous for you to use. No, we can't give this to you. You might do something that's unsafe." It's like, well, there's a lot of unsafety out there, and we each need to make sure we're having that choice and that we're innovating the space and really having an opportunity to give a tool that can elevate and amplify the best of us. Well, then how could we do anything else than make it in a way that does not just keep abundance away from folks who don't live with that on a regular basis? What else could we do other than make something so great, so accessible that folks can take their pick and they can choose for themselves? When we have agency, then we have a better tomorrow. And I think that's what we're building towards. So, that being said, nope, don't do that. Still getting used to it, but still using the OBS Studio. Here, let's pull that up here. Whoop. Oh, goodness, look at that. But I think we're getting a little bit better with the sound here. So looking forward to having this free studio setup as the new norm going forward. So I wish you the best, and we'll see you in the next one.